Scott just made the point.
Jefferson used to be a lot more secure, not just.
Well, as you likely know by now, this is our last set of trifectas, at least here at PJTV, although we will be continuing the show, and we'll cover that at the end of this episode. I know I speak for Steve and Scott when I say that this has been the best 8 years of my life, and that 2,500 or so episodes over 8 years in this business is not just steady work, it's virtually eternal life. I could not be more grateful for the chance they've given me and all of us. So since we won't be able to find out who wins this horse race, at least here at PJTV, thought we might do the next best thing. So let's bring in my friends who are really my brothers. They've certainly gotten to be that way over the course of the last 8 years, Steve Green and Scott Ott, to do a final round of prophecy, prediction, and prognostication here at home in the little blue boxes before we take the show on the road. Steve, Scott, fancy meeting you here. I thought I'd keep this one simple. You know, we were hoping to see this race down to the end, but since we can't, just the question, same question for all three of us. Steve, let's start with you. Tell us about the Trump administration, the Cruz administration, the Clinton administration, and the Sanders administration. Just a thumbnail, but that way at least we got our bases covered.
Oh, Bill, I knew I should have looked at this thing before we started taping, because if we had, I would have made a martini the size of John Madden's head, and I'd have it right here on my desk. And instead of answering you, I just would have downed that thing. It would have been all spilling down me, and most of it would have ended up in my gullet. And then with any luck, I would have died of alcohol poisoning before I had a chance to kill myself on January 20, no matter who is sworn in. A little more seriously, Bernie Sanders' administration would be a... I can't even begin to imagine. You know, we've spent the last almost 8 years now with President Obama hectoring us and lecturing us and just being a general nuisance. This guy would be 1,000 times worse than that, with policies, believe it or not, that are extensions. It is standing on the shoulders of a Lenin statue instead of standing on the shoulders of giants. So that would be Sanders in a nutshell. Cruz. Gosh, we would have a real chance for some real progress with Ted Cruz. I think he means what he says. He comes across as slippery and pandering, but I think, I'm pretty sure there's a constitutional soul in there. And with that kind of leadership, assuming the Senate and the House come along with the GOP, I think he could do some real good. That's my thumbnail for Ted Cruz. Hillary Clinton, wow. Imagine 8 years of more Clinton, only with a crappy economy instead of a great one, with Hillary screeching instead of Bill's folksy charm, and a continuance of the hectoring and the lecturing from on high. Oh. And a Trump administration? It's not going to happen. It can't happen. You know, I just saw a poll a few days ago. In order for a Republican to win, a Republican has to do very, very well with married women. If married women voters don't turn out, a Republican cannot get elected president in this country. Mitt Romney carried married women by 9 points against Obama in 2012, and he still managed to lose by 5 points. A Republican has really got to do somewhere between 15% and up with married women to win. And right now, Donald Trump's unfavorable ratings with married women is 70 to 30%. Not even 1 in 3 married women thinks they could absolutely, under any circumstances, vote for Donald Trump. So forget it. He's not going to be president. I refuse to prognosticate about that vile man.
All right, then. Scotty, same question for you. President Trump, President Cruz, President Clinton, and President Sanders.
Well, it's funny. I was going to say the same thing as Steve about Donald Trump. It's just like there's no thumbnail for the Trump presidency because it can't or won't happen. I would say, Stephen, though, I'm not sure if it's on the basis of what you just said, because Trump is very weak and has a high disapproval rating among married women. But I think he's going to come out with a charm offensive. You'll see very soon there'll be a charm offensive, and he'll specifically speak to married women and say, look, I understand married women. I own 3 of them. So I think that's going to really turn things around for him. Everything.
Gold-plated.
Once people understand that he knows what it's like to own one of those, I think they'll bend an ear and listen to him. I will say that under a Clinton administration, Sanders administration, either one of those options is just music to my ears because I can revive Scrappleface, which is my satire website that I've kind of put on hiatus for a while, and that will be the full Employment Act, and I'll be selling ads at an incredible confiscatory rate per cost per thousand on that site. So I feel really good about that. I think that if the Republicans manage to hold on to their majority in Congress, that you can look forward to a Clinton administration that is nothing but congressional investigations of Clinton's previous activities and the new clever things that she'll dream up doing while she's president of the United States. Bernie Sanders, I think what you would find there is a guy who spends most of his time in the office looking at the phone and wondering why it never rings. Because no matter what his great ideas are, he's not going to be able to sell it in Congress. I mean, you've noticed all the time that he's been in the Senate, there's not a Sanders caucus. You know, there's not this big group of people who have gathered around him and said, yeah, Bernie, you're the man with the ideas that we like. So I think you basically find an inept one-term Sanders presidency, and then, off he goes back to Vermont and eating syrup with his wife. With the Cruz presidency, I actually have a great deal of hope for this. Not because I have any particular affinity for Ted Cruz personally. I don't know the guy. I met him once at an event and shook hands with him and said hi. But what I like about Ted Cruz is that he has been consistent in his application of the Constitution to the questions of government. And so almost anything you ask the guy, I just heard a soundbite this morning where they were asking a homosexual guy stood up at a gathering and said, hey, I just got married and my husband and I are concerned about what you're going to do in the context of civil rights for gay people. And Ted Cruz's answer went right to the Constitution and right to federalism and right to the fact that this is a republic. And he dealt with it on that basis, and he dealt with it on the basis of liberty. And so I think in a Cruz administration, you may actually see at least a White House that's talking about reducing the size and scope of government, that is holding the Constitution up to every piece of legislation and saying, does this match up or not? And I think the best thing about a Cruz administration, I think, is in the next congressional election. Cruz is a movement conservative, and you will see an influx of candidates who are waiting right now, hiding in the hedges and saying, man, if only we had the kind of support coming from the top, we could get in there. I don't want to run for Congress if it's just going to be frustration, but if we really have a constitutional guy in there, I'm in.
Those are great answers, both of you guys. I'll just give it my quick 2 cents here. President Sanders' administration, on some level, I'm not really hoping for, but on some level, look, if we're going to do it, let's just get it over with. I mean, that would finally show the American people what this entire policy that Barack Obama ushered in is all about. Let's have our 97% income tax rate, and let's watch what happens if you make the minimum wage $15 an hour or $20 all throughout the country. And why only 15? Why not 50? Why not $50 an hour? Bernie's economic policies are so precisely wrong and so shockingly naive that on some level, I think it would actually be less of a disaster and more of just a lesson, a carnival. It's like, you know, it's like trying to watch a horse jump off of a bridge and fly away. Not going to happen. The Clinton presidency disturbs me in a number of ways. This woman has been so corrupt, so venal, so easily bought, so above the law, so entitled, and so nasty that if she gets away with what is the worst security leak in the history of the United States, if she simply walks away from this, then we do not have a rule of law in this country. You can literally do anything you want to if you've got a D after your name and you're a prominent position. Bill Clinton can rape women, and Hillary Clinton can basically sell out the entire security apparatus of this country. All of the security agencies have said they'll never be able to prosecute a case again if she gets to walk on this. So if we see President Clinton, then you know that we're no longer living in a republic. You know, Donald Trump presidency is, of course, the singularity that no one can really see through. I think even Trump supporters would say that the appeal of Donald Trump is that he is the destroyer. He's the destroyer. And his entire appeal is that he's the guy who's going to take the incredibly complex and messy Etch-a-Sketch of you know, Byzantine kind of dealing and backroom deals, and he's just going to take it, turn it upside down, and shake it and see what you get next. there's a case to be made for that. I don't think it's the best case, but there's a case to be made for that. I'd certainly like to see the system as we know it more or less destroyed than see Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders ride in there and give us another 4 years of the 8 years of whippings and intimidation and chicanery and fraud and all the rest of it. And then finally, a Ted Cruz presidency. I've obviously been a Cruz fan. Not much to repeat over what the other guys have said. Ted really is a true believer in the Constitution. He really is. Now, what's unusual for Ted, at least as far as my feeling on him, is this. Unlike Scott, I do know him pretty well. I've spent a fair amount of time talking to him. About 2 weeks ago, I spent 40 minutes talking to him. That's a lot of time for a guy on a campaign trail. Just the two of us. And I thought from the beginning that Ted's problem was that he was so sincere and so nice that he's not going to be alpha enough to win the presidency. The person that we're seeing, I'm not saying you're wrong if you have a different opinion. I'm just saying the person we're seeing out there is not the person that I believe him to be. And I certainly like the person I met backstage better than the person I see on stage. So there you go. I think we've probably pretty much covered the four options, at least as they look to us as we tape this. So let's just wrap up my last trifecta by saying this. My friends at home and out there watching, it's been a great ride. It's been such a great ride that the instant we got the news, Steve, Scott, and I got on the phone, and within 10 seconds, we decided that we wanted to keep Trifecta going, so that's what we're going to do. We're all going to work for free for as long as we can, several weeks at least, in the hope that enough of you Trifecta fans and PJTV members can keep the ball rolling indefinitely. And the way to do that is to go to BillWhittle.com and become a member there. I wish it was Trifecta.com, but this is set up, and we are on relatively short notice here. So we're going to do a weekly members-only show in appreciation, just as we do here. But for the time being, we'll be hosting Trifecta on YouTube. That'll be on Bill Whittle channel, so be sure to subscribe there for free. And make sure you don't miss an episode, because we don't plan to. I've said this hundreds and hundreds of times, but this time with feeling. For Steve Green, for Scott Ott, and for the rest of the Trifecta crew here at PJTV, I'm Bill Whittle. We'll see you next week at BillWhittle.com.